Hey, Dr. White.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Happy New Year.
Just looking to see if we have critical mass here to get started. I think we do. All right, so let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, for being here for another fabulous session of Finance and Operations Committee. We'll just jump right into the agenda. And the first thing are the action items, and there are 9 information-only items. And are there any committee members with questions or comments about any of the information-only items? All right, I had none as well. So we'll jump into the abstracts, the first one of which is Yale New Haven Hospital Career Awareness Program. Ms. Natalino?
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year again. This is another opportunity for us to grow our internship programming for our New Haven Public Schools students. It is always nice when they are giving us the money versus we are asking for the money, and that's exactly what Yale is doing. They are paying our students to intern with them. So the 2 abstracts, one is for the virtual and one is for the in-person. I spoke with Yale right before break, the most applicants ever in the history of this program, which came prior to COVID. They had a really difficult time picking the 14 students. So I did get a name of the students that applied but were not taken. Hopefully we can get them connected with some other internship opportunities in the healthcare system. So there'll be 14 on campus. The nice part is that they usually continue through the summer as well through Youth at Work. And then the virtual, they'll be taking 6 students virtually to do more of a career awareness program. And those are the 2 Yale abstracts that are numbers 1 and 2. Any questions?
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions from the committee?
No.
I had none either. I agree that it's nice when they're funding.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was what you discussed was abstracts number 1 and 2. So,
yes, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe they were the first 2.
Right.
The Yale
So yeah,
School to Career and the Yale Virtual Career Awareness.
All right. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to number 3, which is a FAFSA challenge grant.
Yes. So once again, this is a state grant. We have received funding for 4 of our schools. Actually, 3 of our schools received funding for FAFSA Challenge this year. And basically what it is money to incentivize increasing your FAFSA completion numbers. The research shows the more students that complete the FAFSA, the more students that will be successful in continuing on to 4-year and 2-year colleges. And so Cross, Hill House, and Co-op this year were selected for this grant. Last year, New Haven Academy and what was my other school? New Haven Academy and Metro actually made their goal. So there's an extra $1,000 in this grant for each of them as their award for reaching their FAFSA challenge goal.
All right, that's great. Any comments or questions from the committee?
Yes, just a comment.
Dr.
Yes,
Yarbrough.
Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, just congratulations to the 2 schools that met their goal, and also for Career and Hill House to still be working on this topic and towards getting our students and families to fill out FAFSA and thinking about their next steps and making good financial choices. So thank you for your work on for applying for the resources.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And as I'll just also say, as somebody that works at a university, that FAFSA is pretty key. And it is one of those barriers that people see and perceive as a major impediment. And but it is the key to unlocking financial aid, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So including, the grant money and other things. So it's great.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but the FAFSA is being revised, and so it did not open this year. It just opened right after the holiday. So therefore, we usually start this process in October. But they've done their FSA IDs, and now really will be working closely with students and families to get their FAFSAs completed. So it's a different timeline than it's been in previous years.
All right, thank you for that update.
Yes.
All right, hearing nothing else on this, we'll move on to item number 4, which is looks like Title 4A Student Stipend Academic Enrichment Grant. Ms. Haxey.
Hi there. Happy New Year. Thanks so much. So this is the Title 4A grant that we pretty much receive every year, but we do have to have our application approved. This grant is interesting because it has 3 major buckets that we're allowed to spend in. The first is well-rounded education. So any of the things that we actually normally can't pay for with a lot of our other grants, things like college before college experiences for our kids, AP and all of the AP testing and AP training and AP textbooks, things related to world languages, such as our seal of biliteracy testing and things like that. And then the second bucket is safe and healthy schools, and parent involvement is included in that. So we pay for our climate survey here. We pay for health curriculum to be rewritten here, things like that. And then the third bucket is effective use of technology. And so this is a grant where we pay for a lot of our technology software, or platforms like such as Kami, which a lot of the teachers are using now. So I can go through everything in a lot more detailed way if you'd like, but basically we have 837,564 for the public schools, and then we also serve the non-public schools with this grant, and they get about 50,000, 49,916. And this year we have about 70,000 less overall in the grant than we did in past years. It is based on enrollment, and it is related to our Title I numbers as well.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions from the committee?
I have a question.
Dr.
Yes.
Yarbrough.
Hi, Dr. Yarbrough.
Hello. Thank you so much for applying for this grant and for describing the buckets that we can pull from in order to serve our students. Just a question for maybe the future grant applications. Would something like, I think you mentioned a health curriculum, would an environmental curriculum or climate, an environmental curriculum be something that can be paid for and applied for from this grant, or would that be a different topic?
It's a good question. It's not a definite yes or no. Basically, this grant does allow you to pay for sort of STEM related type of things. And also it allows you to pay for curriculum writing. So if our internal curriculum, our internal, science teachers or something wanted to work together on a climate related curriculum writing, it could pay for that, pay the teachers. If it's in terms of like a curriculum, meaning like you would buy a program like textbooks and things, as long as it's not supplanting something that we should already be providing. So just like all the other title grants, there's that supplanting thing where, for example, I can't use it to buy the math textbooks that the city should already be buying type of thing.
Yes.
So but there are certainly, there's certainly ways to use this money to support that work, I would say.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
It depends on how we would, work it out, but yes.
Yes, yeah. Okay. That's clear. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you for the questions and for the answers. And hearing nothing else on this item, we'll move on to the next one, which is number 5, which is about an integrated care pilot project. Ms. Joseph Lumpkin.
Yes, good afternoon and Happy New Year to everyone. So we're very excited about this opportunity. We were approached by the Connecticut Association for Mental Health, Infant Mental Health, to collaborate with the Connecticut Department of Social Services to participate in a pilot project. We will be receiving a small grant of about $24,000, which would support this effort to look at behavioral determinants among young students. As we all know, there is an uptick in mental health and behavior issues among youth, and that holds true for younger ages as well. And this collaboration allows our family resource centers, which have highly trained parents as teachers, certified coordinators, to work with a local organization to assess young children along with their families to determine if they are at risk for behavioral, mental health, and even other physical concerns. Our family resource centers have been around for a while. It is a competitive grant that we've been successful in winning across 5 communities. We're located at Fairhaven, at Hill Central, at Troop School, at Brennan, and at Wexler Grant. And this particular pilot would occur in the Fairhaven community, along with with our family resource center there. So the grant will pay for a parent educator to spend some time over at the health clinic at Yale, and we will be working with those families to better understand if they are at risk for mental health or other physical concerns, and providing them with access to resources within our communities. That's what we're really good at, and we're looking forward to this small pilot and to receive these funds in order to carry out these services.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions from the committee?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, please, Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes. Thank you for being a part of a pilot to kind of prove the concept and also be at the early stages to be able to make adjustments to what would make this work as it expands. This may be in the documentation, but how many students or families might we be able to begin to serve with the pilot?
Yeah, it is not in the documentation, but in the conversations that we've had, we may be able to serve up to about 100 families.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you for that. And hearing nothing else on this item, we'll move into the agreements, the first one of which is with Trifecta Ecosystems. Ms. Strand?
Hi, yeah. So we're excited to be continuing our work with Trifecta around environmental justice, aligned with our social justice theme here at HSC. We'll be expanding our gardening resources to include a pollinator garden and berries, and also having additional curricular support for the teachers implementing the work. And Trifecta itself is going to be providing an educator to teach an elective course next semester here, grounded in entrepreneurship and environmental justice, as well as food equity.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? All right.
Question?
Up, go ahead.
Thank you. Also, thank you for this work. The curriculum that will be used, is this a curriculum that can stay with our teachers in school even after the end of this award, or does it kind of belong to Trifecta and we're unable to teach it or do lessons from it?
That's a great question. We will be able to continue to keep that because the intention is to continue this partnership in a variety of ways. So even though we are unlikely to continue having an educator from Trifecta here in the building, we will still have access to those materials, resources, lessons, activities.
Great, thank you. And thank you for thinking about that.
All right, thank you very much. Hearing nothing else on this, let's move on to number 2, which is an agreement with Great School Partnership. Also, Ms. Strand.
Yeah, so this is essentially just a continuation of the work we've started earlier this year with GSP. Because we had limited funds from our our school improvement grant carryover. We had part of the contract on that and part of the contract on new SIG funds. It had to be a new agreement because there was a gap between the two. So we are sort of resetting the clock, but the work is the same. We have had our coach, R.L. Sprotzer, working with us around our professional learning for teachers, grounded in our ePortfolio program. Ensuring fidelity to project-based learning best practices, as well as mastery-based learning best practices, with a real focus on rigor and ensuring we're not only pursuing those initiatives appropriately, but also that we are having our students reach their highest levels of achievement so that they can demonstrate that in assessments that go beyond the project-based learning world.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions related to this? I had none either, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next item, which is an agreement with LEAP. Ms. Camacho?
Good evening. I'm definitely not Miss Camacho, but I am stepping in for her to present the agreement with LEAP. As you know, LEAP is a state contractor. They're well known in New Haven, and they utilize several of our facilities to provide programming to our students. And so we've partnered with them for what is really a fraction of their total cost and services for what they provide to our students year round. And they will be working with them on literacy, enrichment activities, arts, and athletics.
All right, thank you. Are there any comments or questions related to this item? All right, hearing none, I had none either. So thank you for stepping in. And we'll move on to the next one, which is an agreement with Achievement First. Ms. Jackson.
This is just one of our standard contracts with our charter schools, state charter schools for special education services. I know that I've been here before talking to you about sometimes some of the timing at which we get some of the contracts has to do with some of the negotiations. But again, I want to continue just to make sure that we continue to put that out there regarding charter schools and what folks look for, reimbursement for special education cost, because it's not necessarily equitable to what we have in district. So again, you see the timing of this particular contract and going in, similar to that, you will see something coming down the line, even from our Gateway to College program, as far as some of the timing in which we receive some of the contracts back. But I just wanted to make sure, just continue to voice the concern that we continue to have.
Okay, comments or questions related to this? Thank you for reminding us of that concern. A question I have, is this the last of the charter schools, or is there another? Are there more?
There's no, for this year, sorry. I thought
Yeah.
you were asking if there were any more charter schools in New Haven.
No, I mean,
no, I think this is the last one, Mr. Wilkes. I will double check, but I believe it is. I'll have to double check. I think Common Ground has been, and along with the others, but I'll have to get back to you just to say that with 100% certainty.
All
I don't
right,
want to
thank
give you
you.
false information.
And just if I remember correctly, as you've also mentioned here, this is, this requires negotiation with these schools.
Mhm.
And the district's position is trying to make it so that it's equitable in terms of the students in these schools are getting what the students in New Haven schools are getting as well in terms of the level of services.
Mhm.
And that
And the associated cost.
and the
Correct.
associated costs for it. So thank you for always raising those concerns. Right. Hearing nothing else on this item, let's go ahead and talk about Cheshire Fitness Zone, item number 5.
Yep, that is an increase, a substantial increase into the contract for Chester Fitness Zone, who provides us with staffing to assist with speech and language evaluations. Right now, currently, we have 6 speech and language pathology vacancies. I think I've been here before talking about the national shortage in speech and language, but again, Cheshire Fitness Zone has been able to find some additional speech and language pathologists to help us and assist with speech and language services as required by students in their IEP.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions related to this? All right, so I'm glad that you were able to find some folks through this vendor. It's unfortunate that it's a national shortage area. We deal with a lot of shortage areas, but this is also a mandated area for services that students have rights to. So, all right. Hearing nothing else on this, let's go ahead and move on to item number 6, which is an amendment with Relay Hub.
Relay Hub actually helps us to provide with some reimbursement that we can get from the state based on some children, a population of our children with IEPs. They do the work for us. This is just a change, an amendment to change the actual start date. As the vendor, unbeknownst to us, said that there was some work that was done in July that was paid, so we have to go back and change the date to July 1 instead of August 28.
And as a reminder, this is work that they get a percentage of what they are able to recover.
Yes,
And so
that's correct.
So when they're doing that work, they're recovering funds for the district so that it's quite useful for us. Are there any comments or questions related to this? All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and move on to number 7, an MOU with Connecticut Association for Infant Mental Health. Ms. Joseph Lumpkin, and before you do jump into this, I also had a conversation earlier in the day with Ms. DeMayo, and because this is an MOU, we might be just listing this a little different in terms of categories on the board agenda to make it clear that, you know, that the MOU it's a little different than the agreements. So please, Ms. Joseph Lumpkin. You're muted.
Unmuted. The MOU is actually a part of the abstract that I presented earlier, and it speaks to our opportunity to work with the Connecticut Association for Infant Mental Health, along with the Connecticut Department of Social Services. And we have outlined what the relationship would be, specifically the role of our Family Resource Center in collaborating on the implementation of the previously mentioned program within the abstract that I previously presented.
Great, thank you very much. Any comments or questions related to this? All right, I have none. They were addressed, and the information's posted on the website as the backup for this, so thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And so hearing nothing else on this item, let's move on to number 8, which is an amendment to the agreement with Arte.
Okay, Christian Tabaris is on. We'd like to be able to share our PowerPoint. I know that some questions have been asked concerning our work with our vendors. And so, Christian, if you don't mind sharing. And we will go to, I believe it's slide number 2. And this is where, before I get into the actual amendment, which Christian will support us in presenting, I wanted to break down how we address conflicts of interest. As you know, the board has a very clear policy approved in 2018, policy 9270A, and we expect that our employees disclose potential conflicts of interest. If a conflict is identified or raised, the involved employee is separated from any decision-making related to the vendor. This process helps us to get to the transparency and the fairness that we have in our RFQ evaluation process. And of course, we look to ensure that we don't have bias and that our office and everyone else involved maintain integrity in the procurement process. In cases, and we have had multiple cases where these conflicts are raised, as I said previously, we separate the employee from the process. We'll talk about this a little more. I know there's some other questions that the board had raised. I just brought to my attention this evening, and we can talk about that a little bit more as we go through the RFQ process. But we wanted to be clear that we follow board guidelines on what constitutes a conflict, as well as ensuring that we put this specific practice in place, which is we're looking for disclosure or for identification. We handle this through counseling. We've resent this board conflict of interest policy to our entire team. So as a reminder of what constitutes a conflict of interest, as well as ensuring that, as I said previously, there's no participation of the employee in any of the decision making. So with that said, we'll take the slide down and I will go to the presentation of the amendment and I'll turn it over to Christian.
Good evening, everyone. This is a resubmission of the previous amendment for Arte. This is to support 2 after-school sites over at Clinton Avenue and Jepson School. And the other portion is to support the McKinney-Vento identified students to participate in after-school programs at the Atwater Senior Center, as well as Saturday Academy sessions from 24 Saturday Academy sessions, as well as 10 college readiness sessions where we provide students who are McKinney-Vento the opportunity to gain more knowledge and opportunity to apply to secondary education and higher education.
And with respect to McKinney-Vento, as the manager of the McKinney-Vento, I review all of the proposals that comes through to ensure that it is aligned to our strategic plan, first and foremost, and to ensure that we are actually meeting the needs of our most vulnerable students. But critically to ensure that the vendor has the qualifications and the background and the track record to do this work. So this is something that we're putting forward because we certainly see the value of this work. And I previously mentioned our practice in addressing conflicts of interest that may be connected to this, as well as other agreements and other activities that we have in the district. And happy to answer your questions.
All right. And before I open it up for questions, you already alluded to one of the discussion items that we have later in this meeting is we periodically get an overview of the selection process, the request for qualifications selection process, which includes, dealing with any potential conflicts of interest, et cetera. So that is coming later. But we're talking about this here now because with this particular vendor, there is a conflict in the department in terms of a conflict of interest. So my understanding from what I'm hearing is that, this is employees, this is well known, has disclosed as required under policy, that the department and the superintendent, the district are all aware of this, and that safeguards are in place so that this person's removed from any decision-making, evaluation, or management of anything connected to this vendor. Is that kind of a good summary?
That's a very good summary.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll open it up for questions, if anybody has any from the the committee. Dr. Yarborough.
Yes, thank you for presenting the service and also for presenting the district's policy or approach to conflicts of interest or potential conflicts of interest. I think I would want to, Mr. Wilcox, I think I would want to actually go through the review process as later on the agenda, and even talk more specifically about the conflict of interest at some point before agreeing to move this item to the full board for approval. That's just my initial thought as I seeking to learn more information about involved and how we want to navigate this, or me understanding how the district staff are navigating this.
Okay, so your suggestion here is that for this particular item, we wait until hearing we can wait and move all the items after the discussion items. We tend to do it. It was a practice we started to do when we started to have Zoom meetings, and there early on in the process, we had Zoom bombings and other things, and there was worry that a meeting might be interrupted. So we could certainly wait and move the items to the full board until after the discussion, if that works for
What do you
you.
think about this single item versus all the items?
I think it's 6 one way, half dozen. I mean, it's but it saves the potential of doing everything with one motion, but I'm just saying the format of when we do, or the timing that when we do this, as I recall, before COVID, it was kind of at the end of the meeting, we moved things.
I see.
But we started to do it because we had meeting interruptions. And so it was, we wanted to get the voting done before the discussion items in case something went wrong. So
Okay.
I think based on that, I'll just wait to move everything at the end, and but he's going to be able to be on. So
then
that'll address your concern.
Yes, I don't have a particular preference then in terms of when to move it or how to move it. I do have a question, I think, for Dr. Negron, just to hear what your perspective is and take is on our implementation of the policy, and any concerns that you have or not about how we're working with this particular vendor or these particular vendors to provide services for our students and families.
Happy to share. Happy New Year. So I would say that it is my understanding that there have been multiple entities in the past and currently where there are issues pertaining to conflicts of interest. So I don't want to handpick one particular contractor, but what I do know is that there is, I had an opportunity to go back into the policy, speaking with Chief Joseph Lumpkin, to make sure that we are taking every part of that policy in its full context to make sure that when employees are being upfront and saying, might have a conflict of interest, that they're being removed from any kind of decision making. So that is what I'm trying to do with everything and how we are approaching all of these different contracts, because we know, right, we have a lot of different partners that are here to support the work, who have done tremendous work for us. But again, I want to make sure that we're operating within existing policy. So I do want to thank Chief Joseph Lumpkin for going back to the department, rereading again the policy, and make sure that when we have to remove individuals, that we're doing that so that other folks in the department can handle those pieces. So in this case, I'm feeling confident that Chief Joseph Lumpkin has vetted it, also with Christian Tavares being at the helm as it pertains to this particular contract.
Thank you. And I guess another question for the three of you, maybe, as it pertains to this particular contract or other contracts that we work with, does our existing policy, are there any additions or amendments that you would make to how we are currently working with conflicts of interest? And is there something that you recommend be changed either on a case-by-case basis or for the policy to be updated given either the particular scenario with Arte or with other things that you come across that we approve?
I think, again, it's going to have to be one where we go back to the chief of the department that is engaging in a contract to make sure that we have a checklist of some sort to make sure that if a conflict has been articulated, that we are, again, removing the person from any kind of decision making. And again, I want to reiterate, I am fully aware that this particular entity, Arte, has been doing work for a number of years. I mean, a number of years. I think I want to say over a decade. And that conflict has been there, has been separated out. And again, I don't want us to just pick on Arte, because we also know there are plenty of other vendors with relationships as well. And again, we make sure that we're applying the policy so that we are not discriminating against any particular vendor.
So, yeah.
President Rivera?
Put my hand up, it went down. Yes, hi. I have a few questions, just because I've been hearing from the community about this, I guess because it was approved at the last FNO meeting. So my first question is, were other vendors approached for this work? Or was it just that we decided to pass it on to Arte? Like, how did that process work? I might have missed part of the discussion on it.
So we look at the scope of work that is presented by our vendors, and oftentimes we may have multiple vendors providing the same service because they service different communities. So there are other vendors that have done similar work as well as Arte.
But so I guess the response is there were no other vendors for this particular grant that were approached or that had an opportunity to bid on this work.
So no other vendor has approached us to specifically work with homeless students in this particular way.
Okay. Because like I guess like I said, I've been receiving information and calls about this, and there are concerns because from what I'm hearing, the staff person sort of manages the grant or manages part of this grant, and their spouse manages this particular work. And I think the reason why it's raising eyebrows is the amount and the fact that it's a McKinney-Vento grant. So this is at least my concern with it. How are we going to remove the staff person from this work on our end if they've been managing this grant all along?
So the McKinney-Vento grant, the staff person is a liaison to McKinney-Vento. However, the management of the grant is under my auspices. So that is essentially the way that it's managed by my leadership.
Okay, thank you.
Just to reiterate, so we are going to be having as a discussion item a full overview of the request for qualifications process that this department uses for these programs. And there's also extensive information on the district website for youth, family, community engagement that has all the application materials. So if there are folks that want to present their qualifications to work with these areas or with any of the other after-school programs, summer programs, break, April and February break programs, etc., that's the process that's in place. So it's probably good that we, just like we did last January, this January, we're having an overview of that process so that people are aware that that's how you can essentially, it's not so much bid on the work as to present your qualifications. So, and that this is the process by which all of the YFCE of these types of programs uses the request for qualifications process. And so we have approved many things based on that process. So that's why it's particularly good. We're spending time to make sure everybody fully understands that. President Rivera?
As I'm listening to you describe this, I'm wondering if, because I'm having some thoughts about it, I'm wondering if this is why Dr. Yarborough was suggesting that we wait to vote until after that discussion happened.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense. I want everybody to be very comfortable. So we will do that after the discussion items is when we'll vote on moving anything to the full board. And of course, we can move everything or we can move partial. You know, we have options in how we move things forward, or we choose not to move things forward. So, you know, we have all those possibilities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this specific item? All right, President Rivera, your hand's still raised. Is that something additional or is that just from previous?
No, I took it down on my end, but I do see that on the screen it's still raised.
Okay.
Let me try it again.
No worries.
No,
Thank
there we
you.
go.
All right, so now we will move on to, we have several amendments involved with the school readiness program. So Ms. Diaz-Valencia, if these are all what is typical for these, where they're very much identical, the funding levels are set by the state, the vendors are selected by the New Haven Early Childhood Council, maybe we can deal with these as a group.
Right.
Oh,
Good
Ms.
evening.
Derwin.
I'm here on behalf of Ms. Diaz-Valencia. And yes, items 9 through 16 are all reflective of changes to existing agreements as a result of the last New Haven Early Childhood Council meeting, where there's been a reallocation of slots among these community providers, the majority of which have resulted in increase of funding, 2 of which had a decrease in funding. So the spaces have been converted and the funds have been allocated in a prorated fashion between the beginning of the year and the end of the year. I'll go through them very quickly. The first one is Auntie Rose. They are taking on additional 9 spaces that were not filled in infant toddler spaces. Number 10, Calvin Hill is increasing by 1 slot, and that is a preschool slot. First Step Child Care is taking on 2 unfilled spots. The Friends Center has gained 1 spot also. The Gateway Community College is converting 6 full-day pre-K spots to 4 infant toddler spaces. Little Schoolhouse is also converting unfilled pre-K space to 4 infant toddler spaces. Montessori on Edgewood is giving up spaces that they can't fill, so they are decreasing their funding and awarding it to others, as is Westfield Community Nursery. They are converting 2 part-day spaces to 1 school-day space. And each of them has been appropriately prorated based on the type of space and whether it's a full day or school year.
All right. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions related to items, what is it, 9 through 16?
16.
Hearing none, thank you. And we will move on to number 17, which is an agreement with Winston Strategic Partners.
Good evening. This agreement is through the Office of School Choice and Enrollment. It is to help us market the district's school choice lottery process that is upcoming. We have gone with a media buyer because the funds previously had in the office to the MSAP grant are now gone. And we did go through the RFP process through the city, and this was the vendor selected.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarborough?
Thank you. Thank you for presenting this, and I know that enrollment for our schools is very important. So thank you for kind of being proactive to contract with the group to do this. My question is around my question is specifically, is there an arrangement where we pay for results versus lump sums just based on work done? Because I know that with some marketing, some advertisement, you pay based on enrollment, or you pay based on applications, where there's a real incentive to tweak marketing as one goes along to really hit the targets that we need. What's the arrangement for this particular vendor, please?
It is strictly for service only, so we do not have any targets or enrollment agreement with it. We are taking advantage of the media buyer's relationship and professional network to receive the best pricing. If we were to go to the different cable vendors and radio companies, you would receive an astronomical price compared to what we are paying through this agreement. So it's really just we're getting this stuff, advertisement and publicity at a rate that we would not be able to secure as a district, going directly to the different vendors, outlets.
Okay, thank you. What are your thoughts, or what's your understanding on whether or not we are getting the return that we need in order to have people apply and have our enrollment be higher? So I think I recognize that some of our funds are tied to our enrollment, and there may be also other items where families are maybe not finding out in time or not getting the information. I'm unsure, but you may know, this is your world. Where are we in terms of our numbers and metrics, please?
As far as the enrollment?
In terms of enrollment, in terms of applications, in terms of what this marketing is meant to accomplish for our district goals in serving our students.
Sure, our applications are about between high 4 to low 5,000 unique applicants each year. So we still have more applicants than we have available seats. We do recognize that the bulk of those applications are coming in from New Haven residents who are looking to get into a specific school for whatever reason. And also at pre-K, where our numbers are sort of fixed, but parents are always interested in our pre-K programs. So we do see the applicants coming in. It is a choice process, so we do have families who will choose to apply, and then we'll make other decisions even after they're offered a seat. So we're mindful of that. We are looking forward to having an in-person expo this year. So our goal is to get as many people there to that event and allow our schools to showcase the wealth of programming that they do offer.
And is our final yield that we are under enrolled when all this shakes out in terms of parents being given what their option is for enrollment and what they ultimately decide to do with their child? So are we under enrolled at the end, or no?
I'm going to be careful to say that we're under enrolled. District enrollment has been declining in New Haven over the past several years, as it has nationwide and throughout Connecticut. There are just people moving in and out. We're focused primarily on our inter-district magnet schools to support and strengthen that grant. We do see applicants applying. I think we're doing our best as we can, but we have to market and to get the word out there. We do have steady applicants coming in. And working with the state collaboratively to address concerns that we have on our side with the lower enrollment. I'll say that we have some capacity in our schools that we'd like to fill.
Okay, thank you. So one thought that I have, maybe your team already considers this, But the next time that this goes out to bid, or next time we structure a request, might be to actually pay a little bit more for the results, or just see if there's another way to go about paying for our marketing that is not just on the number of hours that people spend and where our advertisement actually shows up, but to getting some of the ultimate yield that we want. I do recognize we've been doing this for a number of years, and the rates that are provided are rates that would be difficult for us to achieve if we were to go out one by one and to contract with these individual maybe media outlets. So that part I do hear, and I thank you for thinking about that in working with this contractor.
If I could just say, I don't know how that would work. We could definitely keep that on the table and see if that even is possible to do what you are asking us to do. We do have the metrics from last year's campaign, and we used the vendor last year, and the vendor also does send metrics periodically throughout the campaign to show us the number of click impressions on digital and where it's seen. So we are able to furnish those to the board if that's helpful.
Great. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
I guess the only question I have as a follow-up on all that is the when you all are in the process of talking to parents who are going through this process, are they asked how did you learn about this? Did you see an advertisement someplace?
There is a post-lottery survey that goes out that does ask the parents, where did they learn about it? Most of our parents, again, that are applying are New Haven parents, so they are learning about it in district. Our goal with our inter-district schools is to attract non-resident populations to fuel and drive student diversity. So we are struggling with that, but we're working.
And also, just because I've been on the board for several years, it is also a key detail in all this, which is being not talked around, what might be being missed is we've had extensive conversations in the past about the state requirements around this funding for certain amounts of ratios of in-district and out-of-district students for these funds. And so you can also have a situation where because of the way the funding for the schools happened, the schools were built maybe a little bit bigger than they needed to, because the goal was to have the inter-district magnet schools so that folks are coming in to the district. And so that's where some of the funds come from. And so that's Mr. Middleton and his office's challenge, is trying to attract like Hamden, West Haven, Guilford kids, etc., to come to New Haven through the programming in these schools. So that's also one of the things that that's floating around in the midst of all this. All right, Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, just one more question about the services. Does in this contract, do we provide the media, or does the contractor come do video, photos? I know earlier there was a lot of, I think, high quality videography done and photos done for our district maybe a few months ago. I'm wondering if that's included in any of the recruitment. I think it might have been related to recruiting teachers, but also the diversity in our district and the strength of our district. Is that any way linked to this advertisement and recruiting effort?
It is not. We have deliverables that we have used in the past. Again, I'll say it again. Our office does not have an abundance of funds. We're funded through the MSAP grant previously that has ended. So without those funds, we cannot go and get additional creative redone. So we produced a commercial last year with the intention of having some shelf life to it and have some photos that we're using now until we can have additional funding given to us to redo that. So we are providing the deliverables that we used last year, but taking full advantage of the media buyer's expertise to allow us to get onto various radio stations, have principals do interviews, have our commercial aired on major media outlets and radio as well, and digital and billboard.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your insights and leadership in this. Thanks.
To finish up with this one final, and just throw out a final thought there that just comes from this, is that this might also be an opportunity on the from the school side that have programs in creation of multimedia content, video, etc., to maybe take a stab at creating some of this. It would be great advertisement of, not only can you come to one of our schools, but you can learn how to do a commercial just like this one, because it was filmed by students or whatever. Just a thought. I imagine a lot of work would have to go into that, but it's something that came to my mind. All right, hearing nothing else on this one, let's we have number 18 and 19 are amendments to the two different agreements with Shipman and Goodwin. So Mr. Lamb, can you address each of those?
Thank you, sir. Yes, as you stated, these are amendments to our existing professional services legal agreements for legal services with Shipman and Goodwin. The first is an increase in the funding by $90,000 to a total amount of $125,000. That will help to cover legal services through the remainder of the fiscal year. The second is, again, an amendment to their existing contract to increase funding by $80,000. From $80,000 to by $130,000 for a total of $210,000. This is based on the current legal landscape that we're in with our open cases and open litigation that we have with these vendors. We're currently working through a number of CHRO cases and a number of cases related to past litigation. And we are still working with the city to onboard our attorneys, which have been approved through the MOU with the City of New Haven and the Board of Education. Until those attorneys are seated and hired, we're still going to have supplemental services through Shipman and Goodwin. So based on the volume of cases that we see before us and what is potential for legal risk, the amounts that are presented should carry us through the end of the year.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions related to these two items? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Lamb. What makes this two separate agreements versus being one agreement?
So historically, and this predates me, the agreements were structured based upon the type of service that was provided. So we had one contract for litigation and one contract specific for employee relation matters. And that's the way that this is currently structured. That doesn't mean that can't change. I think once we have our legal counsel on board for employee relation matters, we'll be able to make the determination on what the scale will be based on the abilities of that person and the scope of work that they're going to be providing. And then we'll be able to also look at the same thing for the general counsel, which is Ilya's current position, which does have some minor structural changes to it, but not anything of significant substance. Once we're able to evaluate where those services will live, we'll be able to take a look at how we can predict what we would need in the future. And that will determine, do we combine them into one contract, put out a real RFP that will look at services beyond Shipman and Goodwin, but also look at how we can better leverage the skill sets that Shipman and Goodwin brings to us that are specific to their firm. They have a lot of value and we don't want to lose that value, but we also want to be able to be good stewards of our dollars. So if there's an opportunity for us to have a different attorney to provide services at a lower rate, for those areas of legal advice that are not necessarily as complex, then that's an opportunity for us to save some money. So once we have those attorneys in staff, we'll have be in a better position to look at how we're going to move forward with the contracts.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughtfulness around this. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. You, with your answer to his question, you answered any questions that I had, like how it relates to the labor relations attorney with the agreement that MOU we entered into with the city. And is that person does not on board yet?
Correct.
Okay. And
We're still reviewing resumes.
Okay.
The labor pool is pretty slim.
Got it.
So we're working with the city and we're working with Lisa Mack and her team just to make sure that the appropriate person is onboarded.
Thank you. All right. Hearing nothing else on this, we'll go ahead and talk about number 20, which is an agreement with Connecticut Custom Aquatics. Mr. Finelli.
Hi, everybody. Yes, this is an agreement with Connecticut Custom Aquatics to perform the startup of the Martinez Pool. The dehumidification project was completed on December 29th. So this is the next step we would take in updating the operations and getting the pool started up. Connecticut Custom Aquatics is sole sourced based on the equipment that's in this particular facility. The pump and filtration system has been sitting for about 3 years, shut down, not performing. So in order to start this up correctly, Connecticut Aquatics would come on, do a diagnostic test, run lines, clean the pumps so that the filtration system and pump system works properly, which allows us to balance the water.
All right. Thank you. Comments or questions? So my only question was, so the sole source part in the documentation, I saw that it's been applied for or working with purchasing department with city purchasing. Is that process complete or in?
It is complete. Yep.
Okay.
We do have that from the purchasing department.
Okay, because typically we have some kind of confirmation, a number, or the letter from the purchasing agent designating that. So that's because they previously for the other. I mean, because we have agreements with them. Mr. Lamb, you have something to throw in?
Yes, I do. The Melinda has actually issued that letter. It was issued last week.
Okay.
And we've not had an opportunity with staff availability to post it. So when Selena comes in tomorrow, it will be posted to the backup of this.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, just as a reminder to everybody, typically everything is posted, on Friday before the Monday meeting, but everything was posted, almost 2 weeks ago because of the holiday break, etc. So makes perfect sense. So thank you for following up with that. All right. Hearing nothing else on this, we'll move on to number 21, an agreement with Stantec Consulting. Mr. Finelli.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. This agreement was with Stantec Architectural Consulting Services. They will be on board partnering with me to design 4 playgrounds. These playgrounds will be new playgrounds, at Brendan Rogers, King Robinson, Nathan Hale, and Edgewood. We will be using ESSER funds for these playgrounds. As we know, these funds have to be spent by September of 24. In order to create a design, stay on budget, and put these out to bid, a landscape architect is required. Stantec was awarded through the New Haven Board of Ed Professional Services Agreement. I selected these architects based on the fact that they are a New Haven-based business, and they came really highly recommended by other architects that we are currently working with through contracts.
Okay, thank you. And I think I saw that you had sent some extra documentation on about this,
Yes.
And that'll get posted to the site as well.
Yeah.
That just basically is explaining what you're saying there, how this was selected. and that these are also in the exempt professional category with city purchasing, so there is more latitude in making these selections.
Yes.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this? All right, hearing none, we'll move on into the purchase orders. And the first one is with Elite Construction Resources. Mr. Elaine?
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Wilcox et al. This is a request for approval for Elite Construction to build a gym curtain over at King Robinson. This was actually done by the school administration staff prior to the summer. They went through a process of a bid where they had no bidders, and purchasing came back and gave them some guidance to find a contractor that can do the work and get some quotes. So this vendor was selected. This was then passed through the operations and facilities teams for review and for us to bring to the committee on their behalf. So this is for a total amount of $27,205 to install a gym curtain divider over at King Robinson, and the funding source is going to be ARP ESSER 3 carryover. Any questions?
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? You've answered my questions, so let's move on to number 2, contract, award of contract with Concrete Creations. Mr. Finelli?
Yes, this contract is with Concrete Creations to replace 3 of the decks at Sound School. This vendor is chosen through Small Business District. The decks will be marine grade bamboo. We are doing this just due to the fact that they are end of life. They're coming off of the buildings. They're not safe. And this will allow us to bring the decks up to current ADA standards.
All right. You said marine safe bamboo?
So it's marine quality bamboo. Yeah.
Okay. I know bamboo's being used for many, many things these days. I didn't know that was one of its qualities.
Yeah.
Okay. Fascinating. Learn something new.
Yeah, it's cool.
Every day. Don't have to be watching This Old House to be able to learn about something new. We can learn about it right here at FNO. Okay, next one is
I have a comment.
What's the next one? Tucker Mechanical, Mr.
Mr.
Snell?
Wilcox.
Yep, I'm sorry, Dr. Yarbrough.
Yeah, just another encouragement and example for our students and families to learn about this particular material and to be some kind of way either involved in witnessing the building of this deck or just some before and after pictures, however it might be. But it sounds like a wonderful learning opportunity. And I don't think our young children are listening to or reading a magazine of This Old House. So it would be great if you could capture some of this being done and the materials used. So thank you.
Well, if I ever hit the big Powerball, which I guess I'd have to buy tickets to actually win it, I'm going to endow a position just to have the educational aspects of facilities and operations be able to be brought into those classrooms, because I know there's not a capacity on the academic side or the facilities and operations side to do that, but it is ripe with all sorts of fun things that I know people work to try to make available, but is challenging, but I agree. Okay, next also, now we're at number 3, which is a contract with Tucker Mechanical.
So this is simply just to replace the existing makeup ear unit at Betsy Ross. Simply the unit is at end of life. It's been failing for quite some time. We have put countless dollars into maintaining this and trying to keep it online. It has failed, and like at this point, there's nothing to do but replace.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? I had none either. Let's go on to number 4, contract with New Haven Painter.
So this particular project is for Career School. Career School has a special ed classroom that has a very specific soundproofing spray on the ceiling. The spray, when it was installed many years ago, I think when the school was built, we're finding out was never sealed. So over time, just like any kind of acoustical product, it's starting to flake and fall. So New Haven Painters is going to go in, they're going to scrape the existing spray foam replace it with a current system that is today's standards, and then seal that, which will allow it to adhere better and hopefully last a lot longer.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, thank you. Just reading the notes and the documentation. So a request was made for quotes. There were no sealed bids submitted. Did more than one person submit a quote, or is just one company submitted a quote? I'm thinking about the price and whether it's high or
No,
low.
so it did go out to bid 15 days. Nobody did the project. So I reached out to our current on-call painting company, and I did require a quote from them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And approximately how long was the previous product in place, did you say? I don't remember if you mentioned.
I assume since the school was built, so we're probably talking close to 25 years.
Okay, so we did. So it might have failed sooner than it would be desired, but it has been in place for about 25 years.
Yeah,
or
and
so.
I'm being told by staff and the principal that it has been flaking and falling for quite a few years now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to the purchase orders. First one is Concrete Creations at a pipe.
So Concrete Creations was hired to excavate a project for us at Cross School. Cross School had a forced charter underground pipe burst. Unfortunately, this pipe was well under the school, so we needed to hire an excavator like Concrete Creation to dredge and dig about 8 feet down to allow Tucker Mechanical, the HVAC company, to repair the pipe. So this actually was an emergency PO. That work has been performed because we knew the school couldn't be without heat. That was done through the Christmas break. The pipe has been securely fixed. We know that he is working. We were assured by Tucker Mechanical that this was a successful fix. We're going to watch it for a while before we fill that hole back in. And then once we have the front sign off on them, we'll excavate, fill back in, and add new paving.
Well, as somebody who was just across yesterday for the inauguration, I can attest the heat was working.
I heard.
Quite well. So there is that. Okay, so understand emergency done over the break.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Sorry. All right. Let's move into number 2, purchase order of sports construction. Mr. Finelli.
So let me just look this one. So this is for the replacement bleachers at Fairhaven. Fairhaven bleachers are quite old. I'm anticipating they're somewhere around 40 something years old. They are again end of life. Stairs are broken, risers are broken. They are rather unsafe. We've had many complaints. So we just feel at this time, again, being for safety purposes, that they need to be replaced.
Okay, you said Fairhaven. This
wait, I'm sorry. Wait a second. I have too many things on tonight. So I think I'm talking about the wrong one.
This is number 2, install and move bleachers at Cross.
I'm sorry. So I'm so sorry. This is for Cross. Cross had a section of bleachers when looking towards the pool to the right-hand side that were rather badly damaged. We have fixed them once before. I did have our on-call vendor go in and look at those. I think it was rather pricey, almost the same cost to repair them. So we felt at this time, rather than repair and put a Band-Aid on again, to go ahead and replace the section.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I think I have too much on tonight, so I was getting my thoughts confused.
No worries. Comments or questions? All right. I had none. So we will go on to purchase order number 3, which is with Tucker Mechanical.
So Tucker Mechanical, in conjunction with Congregation, was the HVAC company that repaired the pipe for us at Cross.
Okay. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough? No? Yes?
This is for the boiler. This is not, right?
So this pipe is the hot water pipe that runs to the boiler. This was the underground pipe that Concreation had to excavate for us to get to repair.
Okay, so one is for, so this is for repairing the pipe, and the other one was for
digging the hole,
filling back in the hole, and for the weight room and completing that work.
The weight room that came off of the agenda.
Okay, so purchase order 1 is to repair the pipe trench.
So
Okay.
purchase order 1 was to dig the hole so that Tucker Mechanical could get to the pipe to replace it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then purchase order 3 is to actually repair the pipe.
Okay, and you said the weight room is off the agenda?
Yes, that was to be taken off the agenda. We decided not to go forward currently with that project.
Okay, so that's number 5 of contracts is off the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, got it. I was looking at the wrong document when you were speaking.
It's okay.
I'm following now. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So let me see where we are here. So that was the Tucker Mechanical. So next we have purchase order for utility communications, and there's 2 of these, both for bi-directional amplifier systems, one at Career and one at Cross. Mr. Lamb?
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Yes, these are bidirectional amplification systems, which will increase the ability of our public safety teams, both fire and police, to be able to communicate both internally and externally to those buildings. This has been a problem at both of these 2 schools for a number of years. Hill House and Career both have very dense construction, a lot of brick, a lot of block, that does not allow the signal from standard radios to either enter or exit the buildings. And these systems will help in the response time from police and their ability to communicate. These are both being completed under state contract with city funding. So this is not coming out of our capital. We may have to provide a share of this, but that's being negotiated between myself and Mr. Gormany as to what that share is going to be. But currently, the account number that is provided by Mr. Gormany is a city account number.
Okay. Comments or questions on either of these? Okay. I had none either. So that puts us down to 1 change order with sports construction.
Yeah, so this account handles a lot of the bleacher moves at FLAC. Every time we move the bleachers for an event and put them back, it's roughly about $2,200. They have had a lot of events this year, plus due to the conditions of the bleachers, every time we move them, there is a safe repair needed. So we did go through the money rather excessively quickly. So we are asking for a $10,000 change order.
Okay. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarborough?
Yes, thank you. Did you say that every time the bleachers are moved, there's a cost of $200? Is that for repairs to something, or is that just a cost of service of moving bleachers?
There's a cost of $2,200. It's about $1,100 to take them out and $1,100 to put them back. And due to the conditions of the bleachers, periodically there is a cost in addition to that to keep them safe or to fix them.
Wait, so $1,100?
Yes, $1,100 to pull them out and put them back.
Oh,
yeah, it's
is
an
that
outside
somebody
company that comes
hiring?
and does that.
That's okay. Just to move. Okay, got it.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, these are bleachers that we would be replacing
We are replacing.
Possibly with a different kind of system that
We
wouldn't
did find
require
a system. I am working with purchasing. I know I've been talking about for a while, but if not next week, the week after, purchasing will finally put these out to bid. And then hopefully sometime throughout the summer, we'll have brand new bleachers put in there, which will now be on an air cast system, a hydraulic hand-controlled air cast system. So we no longer require an outside company to come in and have to move them for us.
And part of the issue was identifying the funding to replace these, because that's going to be a large
It is
ticket
going to be a
item.
large chunk, but we did find the proper funding and how we're going to fund this. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've gone through all the action items, and we decided to go to discussion items immediately next. So the first discussion item is the YFCE RFQ process overview and after-school programs. So Ms.
Okay.
Joseph Lumpkin,
Yes,
please
and
take it away and bring in anybody you need.
think I still see Christian on, and we will begin sharing our documents, if that's okay.
Please.
So we'll go to the next slide. This is us. We wanted to make sure that we started the conversation with focus on where we're grounded. That is our strategic plan with our mission to essentially provide the best opportunities for all of our students and a clear vision to be that premier urban school district that ensures our students have the best possible opportunities available to them for career, college, and life. Our values, as you know, are rooted in equitable opportunities, high expectations, culture of continuous improvement, and collaboration. And we have also outlined here our priorities, academic learning, culture and climate, youth and family engagement, talented educators, and operational efficiencies. Next, please. Specifically, within our strategic plan, we're looking at the extended learning opportunities section, which we've highlighted the 4 key areas for our conversation this evening: extended learning opportunities, SAT Academy, extracurricular activities, giving families information about restorative practices, child development, and other social emotional tools, giving families and community partners, providing families with additional academic tools and online resources to support students, and ensuring that we have extracurricular programs that have standards-based safety and medical protocols and procedures in place. Next, please. And so for the district context that helps us think about our work on a daily basis is you can see the comparison between Connecticut and New Haven for free and reduced lunch. We are about 65% of students, which is an indication of poverty. Our students with disabilities is about 17%, just below that of the state. We have just over 20% of our students are multilingual compared to the state at 9.7%. High need students combined is about 76%. And our students experiencing homeless thus far is at just over 700. Next slide, please. So as we think about after school, we like to quote the Wallace Foundation, which has done extensive research and work in providing guidance in after school. And they point to the fact that our community, which is our students come from oftentimes come from low economic status backgrounds, are underserved, and that after school provides our students with the opportunities to grow and learn and have fun. And when we do this right, it sets up that picture for change that gives students developmental as well as academic opportunities. Next, please. And so we're going to jump right into the lead aspect of our work, which is our request for qualifications. And this allows us to have strong strategic alignment to our district needs and with our strategic plan. It provides us with opportunities to vet to ensure that student school requirements and policies are met. And that goes along with our compliance and risk management, ensuring that insurance and state statutes and federal, state, local requirements are well represented in our work. Talked a little bit about the transparent procurement process that's aligned with this request for qualifications, and to also make sure that we're facilitating good decision making with strong and detailed vendor background. At this point, we're going to click onto the RFQ application section. And here you have the 23-24 components where we highlight the areas that we make sure that our vendors are aware that we are looking for services to support these areas. And we go into detail with our partners around how to access our request. This process usually happens early into the school year. We're doing it early into the year. So we expect by February or so that our vendors will have access to this information. We close the process around April. And these are the important components that we require from them. The insurance, all of the disclosure, certification, affidavits, W-9, detailed programming proposals, the end of year reports, and we ask for recent end of year reports so that we can have a sense of what's happening in their programs as well as the data reporting. The rest of this goes through details around the organization, the contact information, and if we scroll down, we look for even more details around the leadership who is submitting and further specific details. We ask within our scope of work particular questions, and you see we ask here about faith-based organizations because here we add additional guidance. If you are a faith-based organization, there is very specific guidance from the Office of Civil Rights Justice Department, and we want to be sure that we're able to provide that guidance. Again, the organizations tell us what their areas are, which we've pointed out earlier in the initial letter that we shared with you, what types of services that they offer. And just as a reminder, we're literally scrolling through the actual RFQ. We ask about summer programming right off the top because that's what we often try to settle as early as possible before we get into the actual school year, which in this case would be the 24-25 school year. Here, this is the RFQ is not finalized for the 24 school year, so you can see we're asking for summer programming for 23 in this current RFQ. This would be updated within the next week or so. And as they fill out this form, we go into more deeper details. Christian, I don't know if there's anything you want to add here that I might have missed.
No, you hit it all, but definitely we try to transition from the paper application into a more electronic application just for efficiency and so we can store everything in one location. prior years, we had binders about yay thick, about almost 5 to 6 inches thick. So we wanted to eliminate the use of all that paper and just be a little bit more efficient and have digital copies to refer back to, and also to use when we actually write the contracts and the agreements with the community partners.
So I'm going to flip now into the after-school questions that were raised. And we will go to the first slide. I think we're going to get deeper into the evaluation process. So, but to quickly respond to the questions, we are using multiple tools, including the nationally recognized after-school program assessment tool, which we borrowed from our competitive program 21st Century. We've applied for grants and have one there. And that assessment tool, we'll get into a little bit more detail later on, is a detailed quality assessment program. Our team is trained in that work, and it is focused on improving quality. So we will meet with the vendors, we will do the review utilizing the tool. And yes, we've had vendors and staff who have not demonstrated quality improvement. They are not invited back. They are not re-engaged in our after school or any of our programming if we are not seeing the quality improvement within that school year.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. If we could just make sure everybody's mics are muted if they're not speaking. Thank you.
So this evaluation system allows for us to have continuous quality improvement and accountability in program delivery, and we'll share a little bit more about that as we go through. The next slide. Next slide, please. We discussed the direct or the indirect conflicts of interest. There were some questions asked there around the importance of separating employees and others from any decision-making process. We have had multiple conflicts that, you know, we know employees or BOE members or others who we have had contracts or who have relationships with organizations that we have contracts with self-disclose, and we make sure that both employees or BOE members separate themselves from any decision-making around the particular vendor. Next slide, please. There's a question, and again, we addressed this a little bit deeper in the full report regarding the implications for ESSA funding, which is ESSA has been very generous to us, as well as yes, very generous to us. We are working, Dr. Negron is leading a budget review team looking at priorities, focusing on the shortfall and how we will address that. This process does involve YFC services. We are prioritizing services, including after school. And our goal is to mitigate the impact while at the same time managing the realities of the budget, the upcoming budget constraints. At the same time, our department is being proactive in identifying grants and working in partnership with our community agencies to see how we can enter joint relationships to apply for programming to support extended school hours. I think that's the end of that sub-presentation based on the questions that were submitted to us. So going back to, yes, go forward rather, to the next slide. So our RFQ, we received 41 RFQ submissions in 22-23, 54 in the current school year, and currently there are 16 active partners, and we've listed those active partners for you in alphabetical order. Next slide, please. We have talked here about prioritizing our Title I schools to ensure that there are after-school programs, particularly in the K-8 level. And currently we have 17 of our 19 Title I schools have after-school services. And that's making up for a total of 20 of our 31 schools. Overall, 20 of our 31 schools we have been able to fund through our after-school funding supports. So I'm going to turn this section over to Christian to talk a little bit about our funding sources.
Yeah, so this here is a breakdown of our allocations for this 23-24 school year for after school. So the side on the left, which is the blue, which reflect the ARP, ESSER, and Title I funding. This is the funding that we created proposals for our executive team to review and actually negotiate how much we will be given to actually support the after school programs. Those Title I schools that we weren't able to fund under Title I, we were able to use ARP ESSER funding to support those schools. So that's been very helpful. And as you can see, there's two Title I lines, one for after school and one for our Saturday Academy, which is servicing 3 sites, Roberto Clemente, Fairhaven, and Wexler Grant. And then the side on the right, which is our red side, is all of our competitive grants that we've been awarded throughout the years. So our extended school hours money, our 21st century grants, which are 3 different cohorts, 17, 18, and 19, servicing 8 sites. And as previously discussed, as we are preparing for the ESSER funding to be dried up, we have been proactive in applying to different grants. And we have recently been awarded 2 $169,000 grants for after school programming to begin in the 23-24 school year, and it's extended all the way to 2025. So in total for this year, we have an allocation of $2,254,217, and that's servicing a little over 1,400 students. So in total, that's about $1,600 per year per student, and then averaged out, it would be $9 a day per student who participates in after-school programming.
Christian, could you change the slide so we can go to the last one that you just mentioned?
Yes.
I think you go forward. I'm sorry. Go forward. Sorry, my apologies. There it is. Yep. Sorry about that. You're good. Next slide. So here is a deeper conversation around the evaluations that we are using. And this is, we try to clean this up as best. There's probably a graphic that could be used that would better explain the program assessment system. And this is adapted from by the CSDE for after-school programs based on the National Institute of Out-of-School Time. We will be using the core components. I mentioned the APT. We'll be surveying academic and youth outcomes. We'll be surveying staff, teachers, and our participants. And then we'll be also doing a data analysis component that looks at reflection and discussion of the data that we are collecting. And this year, in collaboration with the University of Connecticut, we are looking to implement the strengths and difficulties questionnaire, which gives us an idea of where our students are from the perspective of their sense of belonging, social emotional needs, etc. Christian, if you want to go a little bit into detail, a little bit more about this.
Yes, so the SDQ is actually a pilot survey that is being implemented to 21st century sites. So the first round was actually conducted in early November to just get an understanding of where the students stand in the beginning of the school year. And then there will be a post survey towards the end of the school year around mid-May to actually hear the student's voice and see how they actually were engaged during the after-school program. So the goal is to gather that post and that pre-survey to see how effective our programs are, and not only in providing the material, but actually in having a sense of belonging to our students.
Next slide, please. And for our Saturday Academy, we implemented an academic side of our work called the Footsteps to Brilliance. And also in Saturday Academy, we are going to be putting in the same systems that are in our after-school programs to, as we just described, to also get a sense of what the impact is and the assessments using evidence-based assessments and evaluations. So the Footsteps to Brilliance was our literacy program, which was recommended by our literacy department. It's an online program that supports students' phonics as well as comprehension skills. And we've actually, so if you go to the next slide, we actually so we measured how much time, how many words, how many books were read, and the experiences that students had during the 22-23 school year. This is from last year. And based on, and I know these slides, we really try to capture this as clearly as possible, demonstrate that in this little pilot, we had about 100 students participating, that we were able to see the growth in specific areas. And so we plan to expand more thoroughly in Saturday Academy this year. In fact, we are expanding more thoroughly throughout for all of our students in Saturday Academy, the Footsteps to Brilliance literacy program. Next, please. And so our next steps is to continue to strengthen our evaluations, to incorporate the after school as we discussed, to continuously seek grants along with working with our district opportunities to deal with the financial cliff, to deepen our work with families in our after school work, to ensure that our work is evidence-based, and to include in our RFQ process, we have teachers and staff and our team are involved in reviewing, and we are going to expand to include community partners, parents, and school leaders. And that's an overview. We wanted to be brief and so that we could open up for conversations. We can close.
All right, thank you. And before I open it up for questions, I'll just make the request that the presentation we just saw is posted to the website tomorrow under the other meeting materials for this meeting. So any comments or questions from the committee? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes. So thank you for preparing this and walking us through it. It's long awaited, and you're able to answer some of the questions that I had. And thank you very much for just the data that's involved, the numbers and the names. I appreciate the Footsteps to Brilliance chart where you showed the growth in reading, because that's definitely one of our goals, is to help our children to be better readers, and also to enjoy reading. So it's just exciting to see that there's some forward progress in that. So thank you very, very much. I had a couple of questions. One is just kind of definitions. In one of your slides where you showed funding and encumbrances, there was staff, and then there were a line for staff and a line for contracts.
Mm-hmm.
How do the two differ? Is staff New Haven Board of Education staff, people who work in our district, and contracts are the contractors, or how are those numbers different, please?
Yes. So oftentimes in our after-school program, there's a component where our staff provides tutoring, homework help. These are teachers and paraprofessionals and Board of Education part-time staff that works up to 10 hours a week, which means they're generally working about 2 hours a day on after-school programming and specifically supporting the academic and sometimes even club and enrichment programs. On the community partner side, it's specifically those community partners who provide chess and recreation and arts and craft and culinary and Eli Whitney and the science museums. So we have this, I think, a beautiful balance of our staff bringing their expertise, certification, tutoring, teaching skills in all of our after school, as well as our community partners bringing also their creativity and their experience and this, what, I like to say, this indigenous relationships with our families. And this will also look like mentoring supports and college and career, as I also mentioned, arts and craft and other services. So this is what, again, Wallace and others, the research, the evidence tells us is what makes this after school successful is when we have this relationship between our schools and our community partners in the interest of meeting the needs of the school and students.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have additional questions. I also see Ms. Hannons has a hand raised.
You have additional questions, or?
Yes.
Let's go ahead and finish with your questions, and then I'll move on to others.
Thank you. So looking at the different contractors, I think maybe 16 or 17 that you named, when you compare funding between the different providers or the different contractors, what do you see in terms of the funding of staff, the funding of the programming, and particularly, I'm interested in the data. I want to know if people are receiving equitable funding for the services that they provide and the time that they provide. Do you ever negotiate up investing in the providers who are servicing our children, or either negotiate down investing in the providers who are servicing our children?
Right. So as we discussed previously, first of all, we want to get the best possible service to our students, but we work with limited funds. And yes, there is negotiation and conversation. We compare broadly to what is expected at the state level. We use 21st century measures that would come from CSDE type templates around acceptable funding. And yeah, we have conversations with Boys and Girls Club, with any number, all of our vendors are subject to conversations around how do we get the best possible service for our students, given that we have limited funds. But I think to your point, Dr. Yarbrough, we don't want to undercut our vendors. They still have to pay staff. They have to purchase material. They spend time, substantial time, and put in substantial energy. Oftentimes they are a nonprofit, they're locally based, and they have a deep commitment to our students and families. And we do tend to ask them to give a little so that we could have more students, provide more services, and every single one of them have gone along with our requests. At the same time, we try not to be absurd to the point where the provider cannot provide a quality service. We have those conversations, they come back to us. The prices, the costs are obviously different. As I said previously, if someone is providing arts and crafts versus someone who's providing culinary arts, the services might be a little bit different at a different cost. So we weigh all of that based on our experience, our training. We'll work with CSDE, Wallace, and the Connecticut After School Network in particular. We seek guidance from our program managers at the state if we feel that we're not sure. So we're not on our own with this work. We are involved. We work very closely with our program managers at the state funding, as well as the Connecticut After School Network. We're involved in deep training. There's an extensive amount of training to help us strengthen our abilities to communicate with our vendors. Critically, it's the relationships that we have with vendors so that we could have honest conversations about what we can and cannot do to achieve the services for our students.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You showed that in terms of the number of vendors that we have, so I think maybe 40 or 50 applied between last year, maybe this year, and then there are 17 or so that we're currently working with. So two questions. One, is that number 17 the total number that we have contracted with so far this year, or is it larger than that? And my second question is, what is our process for trying on a new vendor that maybe they're new to working with the district? What is our process for trying them on and seeing that they're able to provide what they are suggesting that they're able to provide?
Right. And so we do that. We bring them for Footsteps to Brilliance, for example, was a new vendor for us. And we started small with them. First of all, we want to, if we don't know you, we want to know more about you. So we look for those, I forget the word, recommendations from partners who are like New Haven or community organizations where they have worked in the past. And so we start with small steps, smaller agreements, see how they work out. We've had vendors that we have brought in to work with a small group of students at one school who over the years, due to the quality of work that they've presented and the evaluation process is critical. So we invite new partners to join. We make sure that their work is aligned to the strategic plan, aligned to what we're trying to, what we've outlined in our RFQ. We establish a small introductory process initially. We put in the evaluation components based on those 3 elements: our strategic plan, the RFQ, the evaluation components, which includes feedback. We make a decision as to if we're going to continue or expand the work. I am pleased to say that oftentimes with these new and smaller organizations, we have gotten very good results and have expanded our work to some of those smaller vendors who are doing outstanding work for us.
Thank you. What's the decision process between going from bringing on a new vendor versus expanding the services of an existing vendor? So sometimes I think I see with F&O that we have a vendor that we've approved, and then the agreement will come back up to add additional funds because they're replicating locations or they're expanding or adding more students. I also think there might be occasions where instead of maybe taking that vendor and bringing them to an additional school, you may want to bring in a new vendor who we don't currently have a contract with and have them serve that school and those students there. But how do you decide whether to bring on an additional vendor or to expand the scope of services for an active vendor?
Evaluation. Really using our evaluation process to see if this vendor is actually working for us. When we have a vendor with a great relationship with a school, and that principal oftentimes, that school comes to us and say, we want more of this. If there is an opportunity to say, well, think about another vendor, we may go to that. But frankly, Dr. Yarbrough, when someone is doing well in our schools and our students and our families are happy, and the schools are asking for more of that, we tend to want to expand that work. Our new vendors, as they come in and they develop, and we've seen that happen with particular vendors, we will expand their work. I believe your question is, well, would we give another vendor a chance who we have not had experience with? If the school is looking to expand a current vendor, it is unlikely that we're going to go back and say, oh, why don't you try this vendor who is brand new? We want to build those relationships, go through an evaluation process with a new vendor first before we actually expand without enough data, background material for us to move forward. So the direct response is we expand based on evaluation and based on the feedback specifically that we get from the schools and our students and our families at times.
And if so not expanding within a school, but thinking about adding an additional school to have an after school program or a certain type of certain category of topic, arts and crafts, sports, media. What's in your decision making in terms of just taking an existing vendor and asking them to multiply to a new school versus bringing in a new vendor who may be able to serve that new school that may not have experience with the active vendor?
Yeah. So if we have a vetted new vendor who we are able, and we've done that, who we are able to expand, and I think your question is mid-year, right? So if we are already doing, I'm using chess as an example, one of my favorite. You've heard me talk about that here. We have a vendor who is providing chess or maybe dance, and there is an opportunity for us to bring in a new vendor. If we've gone through the vetting process, we have in the past brought in mid-year, tried a new vendor, and under the evaluation process, under our vetting based on, for lack of a better word, background checks, communicating with previous organizations that the vendor have provided services for, we will, and we have brought in a new vendor to maybe provide similar services that are currently being provided by an established vendor.
Thank you.
I think that's...
It does answer that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You mentioned your evaluation process. How many of our staff members, our evaluators, will go to a site perhaps at the same time or go to a site for an evaluation so that there are multiple inputs in terms of how a vendor is doing?
So it depends. Currently, we have usually, and Christian, you can correct me, but in terms of the decisions that I've been involved with, one trained provider, after school evaluator, to visit with the provider, with the after school program provider, and we go through a process of the quality areas that we are looking to evaluate. And so it's one person, but I hear you saying, well, maybe we can do three at the same time. Often this evaluation involves a component where we make sure that the program is aware that we are visiting. We don't just like roll up on our partners. The schools are aware, and there are multiple folks who are participating on site. So it may be ourselves along with the principal, the building leader, and the vendor, and we're all together looking at the evaluation components and agreeing what we saw and what we didn't see, and what the expectations are for the improvement components.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, Dr. Yarbrough, to just chime on top of that is there's certain sections on the APTO evaluation that from start of the program to the end of the program. So they're looking at arrival, the transitions between classrooms, homework and academic support. So specific programming going on in the after school program, informal and social time. So what are they actually talking about or doing when they're having snack or just waiting to be transitioned? What activities do they have? And also the pickup and drop off for the students. So we're evaluating every single section, and there's always going to be a minimum of 2 people evaluating the program site. So it's going to be one of our central office staff that go around or the building leader at the site. And also the principal could chime in and actually participate in the evaluation. The more people, the merrier, because everybody takes a score, comes back at the end and writes, we write one full summary of the overall program evaluation. So everybody has a say on what's going on in the APTO.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for saying that. There's one document that I saw tonight that had, I guess, had maybe 4 different raters, and then it took an average of the rating. And I saw just one rater in there, and then the average of it. So yeah, so what you described, having 2 or more, and then having a conversation about what was observed, seems to be very fruitful. Thank you very much. I was going to ask a question about, the impact on attendance. I think you've spoken about it before, but you've also said that, I think in your last slide, what you're looking at in the future is seeing like what the impact is on attendance, on academic performance, and other things. I think that would be great in 2 ways. One, it will allow us and our vendors and our parents to know how these services are really serving our students, and for families to bring out their children to this. But it can also make a case for new funding sources that we're really able to provide some of these additional services, and our students are engaging and seeing better results. One of the future times when we talk, I would love to see, for the particular active vendors, their evaluations over time and what the trajectory is and how they're doing, and what their evaluations have been. And also maybe a graphic to show the various partners we've had over maybe the past 5 years, and who's continued with us and for how long, versus who's new. I think one thing that's important for me is that the individuals the vendors who step forward to say they would like to serve our students, that given they're qualified, that they really do have a good shot at being selected to serve our students and families, that they can kind of break in and serve. And those vendors that may be receiving more and more services, which may be stretching them, may not be stretching them, I don't know, that maybe we can spread some of the services to new vendors so they can become more comfortable serving our district, and we can really expand the skill set that we bring to our families, particularly if they bring something additional and unique to the pool. But thank you very much for walking through what you've walked through. I appreciate the time, and thank you for being in conversation with my questions.
All right, thank you, Dr. Yarbrough. Ms. Hannons, you had your hand up.
Good evening, and again, Happy New Year to all. Just one quick question to satisfy my curiosity. On the slide that you showed how much money was allocated to each pot of money, was the number that you're showing there, that's just what was spent to what you've obligated to date? And I may have already answered my own question, but I noticed that the numbers didn't add up to the allocation. So before you post this slide, I needed to get that question answered for me. So,
Yeah.
like, what is that slide really showing?
If I'm correct, and it's the encumbrances.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mhm.
Ms. Hannons,
I'm sorry.
are you okay?
Yeah, I hear you now. Mhm.
Oh, okay. It includes the encumbrances.
Just
So
to,
it's
okay.
correct.
Okay,
So
so
as
it's
we, right, so as we continue looking for additional supports, we will, or additional teachers, additional staff, expanding programming. Some of our programs are federal and we will continue services through the summer. That would be, some of our 21st century Title I grants. So the current encumbrances is what's reflected there.
all right, thank you.
And Christian, you can chime in
That
on
is
that.
correct. As of December 20th, if I'm not mistaken, that week, that's when I checked all the munis reports as to where our current expenditures are.
Okay. We might want to look at, but we can talk offline because we might want to just maybe change some of the wording then.
Would love to have your feedback on clarifying that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I recommend adding that explanation as to, just so to answer anybody else's questions, I might have a similar question. So, an annotation on the slide to provide the definitions. Was there any other questions you had, Ms. Hannons?
No, that was it.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions? I'll just say thank you for this presentation. I mean, it's something we heard last January, but it's also even more detail, really outlining the process. I appreciated the fact that through the RFQ process, we're seeing increasing number of potential vendors applying to be part of this. And so I think that's encouraging. That means people are finding ways of doing this. And so that might be something also maybe even to add into the questionnaire that you use is how did you learn about this opportunity? Just so that you have that data to know how to be reaching out to increase to continue to increase that number so you have the best selection pool for this. So I appreciated seeing that. I appreciated also kind of the rundown of the financial information and the extensive information on how the evaluation happens, the selection, et cetera, that adds credence to the previous comments on agreement we were looking at about how this process works, that there can be multiple people involved in the process and checks in the system to be getting not just one person's input, but several people's input. I liked even that idea of increasing it. It's almost like a 360 evaluation kind of model of increasing the pool of people providing their opinions on the services. I think that gives your department a better picture from a wide variety of viewpoints as to what's happening. It also allows good feedback for the vendor. Particularly if the teachers, for instance, or the paras are seeing something that maybe you all aren't, but they're going to have a different perspective. So I think increasing that is even better. So I appreciate that. And as I've requested, if we could just have this posted, because we should have all our information posted soon after the meeting, in case other people have questions. I know other board members review all the materials from this meeting as well, and I imagine other members of the public. So thank you. Anything else on this item? Dr. Yarborough?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Wilcox, I know I requested that one of the agreement items or contract items be moved until after this presentation and conversation. And so thank you for doing that. And my comment is, I don't necessarily know how to proceed because we haven't really spoken in any detail about particular evaluations on any of the vendors and also not Arte, but also not in specifics in terms of conflict of interest and how we're navigating it and how it's navigated in particular scenarios. I know that it was presented and we spoke about that the policy is followed, but it doesn't necessarily bring up the specifics of this vendor and the topic at hand. So I'm just saying that to say that I don't necessarily know how to proceed because I don't know that anything was cleared up. Though I do have a much more clear and a much broader or wider understanding of this department and the services that we do get an opportunity to contract with vendors to provide for our students and families. So I do appreciate the time a lot.
Well, I'm happy to take the time as needed for these things. I mean, a lot of things that I've heard did deal with specifics in terms of for the particular contract or agreement at hand that we've heard the process of how people are selected, how they're evaluated, how policies are being followed in terms of if there is a conflict of interest, which is not just for this particular agreement. I mean, I have conflicts of interest and I follow board policy and did it recently. And my wife took a part-time job with United Way. So on a project that has Workforce Alliance funding. So I recuse myself on anything to do from that point forward with United Way and also by extension Workforce Alliance. And so that's, we have various conflicts throughout the district on the board and in staff. And the question is, are the policies in place, which is the board's responsibility? And then are they being followed, which is the superintendent and the district's responsibility? And I've heard from various people saying, yes, that is the case. And I'll also say, I've been on this board for about 4.5 years, and I heard about this conflict with this particular vendor before I got on the board, saying, keep an eye on that, and been keeping an eye on it. And what I've not heard is somebody saying there's problems there, that the vendor is not providing the work, they're not doing a good job, they're not fulfilling what their obligations are under the agreements that we give them. So those are the things that I've heard, which is why I've continued to support them on the various agreements. I mean, this is an amendment to an agreement the board already approved. So those are some of the reasons why when you talk about what we do now, my thought is we move the action items and we typically move them with a recommendation to approve. We occasionally ask for something to be memorialized in a memo, which we certainly could do that. Just please put this in a memo so that it's also in a succinct form for our board colleagues to also review. And if we don't have the 3 committee members that are willing to support that, then I'm happy to move it without a specific recommendation, but just to be able to move it from here to the full board's consideration so that we can not hold up this work, because I'm assuming it needs to get started at some point, or we're going to have programs at Fame, Daniels, Troop, Truman, etc. not happening.
I think thank you for naming all of that. I think to the points you've raised, so services and budget, well, let me back up. I'm new to hearing about the topic. So I don't have a history of hearing about the topic or the conflict. So I'm approaching it like, this is day one for me. And I think what information could be useful and helpful would be, one, how strong are the services? Is the vendor meeting? So we were to look at this particular vendor, is the vendor meeting the services contracted for in a strong way? And I think that would be demonstrated through just showing the results of several evaluations, hopefully different evaluators, multiple times throughout a year or whatever the cadence is, saying like, this vendor is providing strong services for what we're doing. And then the other part is on the fiscal side, that the resources are being invested and spent in the way that we've contracted or that has been decided. I'm not sure what our contract entails with them or with any vendor when we say, here's the award that we're agreeing for and how it's actually spent. And if there would be a third topic, it would just be on the longevity of the vendor. And, our district continued to demonstrate that we're working with strong partners, and we're also not stopping anyone else from coming in and also being a strong vendor for us. But I think for me, especially all three, but particularly the first two might be able to be answered quickly. It's kind of concretely saying, this is our evaluation and this is how we see this scenario, and we think it's, on the up and up to support it in full.
So if I may, from what I heard that is actionable, because there's multiple things in there. One is specific to this particular agreement, and the other is in maybe more detail in general of the things that we do through this process. So it sounds like what a pathway forward with this particular agreement is that we move it to the full board and we request that a memo is created that just outlines that this is what the conflict is and this is how the district policy is being dealt with, and this is why the department and the district thinks this is a vendor to continue to work with based on the evaluations and the other data that you specifically mentioned about the quality of their work. And then if that is provided to the board and posted publicly by Friday, then people would have, by the time you get the actual binding vote, which is the board vote on Monday, you'd be able to review that material.
Yes, yeah. And I think in providing specific data on the evaluation of performance and also our agreement in terms of budget and how the money is being invested. I don't know to what degree we ask for receipts or there's a breakdown of how the money is invested. But those two things I think would really clarify any potential conflict of interest and give me and maybe give the public clear thoughts to move forward.
Okay, so that sounds like that could be added to the memo that just kind of outlines this process and how it's being dealt with. I do also think moving forward, I mean, we have other processes for this moving forward. We have been talking about, and I know staff have been working on revisions to our cover memos. We'll just specifically ask for this particular item, are there any conflicts of interest based on board policy? And if so, how are they being dealt with so that everything is just spelled out? Transparency is my goal. I need people to have trust in the process so that we can all get the work done together, as opposed to people being suspicious or, aspersions cast on anybody or any vendor. So, I mean, we can do that in the future just to make it very clear, just like we do with, like when I'm recusing myself on items and when others recuse themselves. Dr. Negron?
Yes, Mr. Wilcox, I just wanted to say that I appreciate that recommendation because I believe that would be asking all vendors moving forward the same question. Again, I'm all about equity, which is one of my core values. And I want to make sure that all this work, again, centers in that. So I do appreciate that suggestion. Chief Joseph Lumpkin, maybe then we can talk about how do we standardize that as part of the application process moving forward.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to make the motion to move these items because we still have another item on the agenda, which is going to take some time probably to discuss. So I think we need to come to closure on this. So unless anybody's unwilling for me to move these items forward, please speak now. Understanding that there'll be, for this particular one, there'll be a memo provided that'll have the extra information. And again, this is all a good process because it makes it very transparent. We're talked about this relatively extensively, and I think it was worth the investment of time. And then also another new thing in this is, you know, we have a new superintendent, so it was also her words also on her understanding of the process and the work that she's been doing on this. And I have confidence through all this, she's had her full attention on this as well. So I think this is all encouraging. So with your all's permission, I will make a motion, and that is I move that we send to the full board with a recommendation to approve the 5 abstracts, the 21 agreements, the 4 contracts, which does not include the cross weight room, which has been pulled, and the 5 purchase orders and the 1 change order.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes.
President Rivera?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So those items will move. And we have one more item on the agenda, which is a information about facilities master plan. So take it away, Mr. Lamb, or whomever else needs to be brought in.
So
Or
I
Dr.
actually want
Negron,
to-
or
Yes, I'm going to sort of frame it, and then I'm going to have Chief Lamb and also our partners from Vigals and Partners come in as well. So as you know, since my arrival, I indicated that I wanted to come in and listen so that I could learn about the state of the district, so that then I can identify strengths, needs, and be ready to lead effectively. So as part of this, I did learn that the district had been engaging in conducting a long-range facilities planning study, and that the process pretty much started in year 21-22 and progressed through last year, and that we do have now findings and recommendations. So today we are going to take time to have the partners come in, walk you through that study along with the recommendations. I do want to frame this by saying, look at this as part 1. I'm calling it part 1 because there's a lot of information. This information has been used to then guide what I am calling our capital plan that I hope to present to you as part 2 when we come back to F&O in the next month. So there'll be a lot of information coming at you. So I'm just kind of letting you know. So we're probably gonna be here for probably another hour or so. But I wanna make sure that we get thorough information around the facility study and what we learned from it. But please know that I want all of that to sort of sink in, that you have time, because we will come back to you in phase 2, which is the capital plan presentation in the next F&O meeting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief of Operations Lance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Negron. So as Dr. Negron stated, this is a process that started actually prior to my time with the district. There was an RFP put out for a facilities master plan study to be done for the district. This was awarded to Spiegels and Partners, partnering with the SLAM Collaborative, which is another architectural firm. They both have extensive experience developing these types of plans for districts. I know a lot of us were not here during the original contract award, but a lot of things have morphed along the way as we've developed this plan. I believe Spiegels and SLAM have put together an extremely detailed presentation that will take us through what we need to achieve as part of our strategic planning, moving us into the future. Mr. Brotman and Mr. Moriarty, I'm sorry, I can never pronounce your last name correctly. Can you please correct me?
Yeah, Morehart. It's Morehart.
Morehart will be presenting the information that they have collected in the last 2 years, looking at some projections of capacity, utilization, enrollment, and many other areas that we'll get into more detail with after the presentation. After they present on the data that they have collected, I will present on some of the recommendations moving forward, and then a brief conclusion, and then we'll wrap it up with questions. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Brotman and his team to move through the agenda. I will actually share my screen and their presentation. And with that, Mr. Brotman, please proceed.
There we go. Thank you very much. And thank you, Tom and Dr. Negron, for working with us, getting us to this point, as well as I believe most of the people on this board or on this committee have been a part of helping us. Again, I'm Jay Brotman from Spiegels Plus Partners, a local architectural firm right here in the town, and we've done 5-year schools. And Kent Morehart with SLAM up in Glastonbury, they also done 5-year schools. So together we represent already a large portion of your schools. It was going through this study, as Tom mentioned, we have a very extensive report. And then what we're showing you tonight is the slide deck is the summary of that report. So all of the heavy details are included there, but this overview should be sufficient for where we are today, and then, delving into the more details as you see fit. Tom, next slide, please. So the work of so the agenda is we're going to talk about contract deliverables and then summary of findings and goals, objectives, and strategies. And as Tom mentioned, he's going to weigh in on the strategies that have been selected by the school board, by the administration to pursue, and with your approvals here today. Next slide, please. Our work included these 5 areas of study. We did a demographic analysis and enrollment projections, and you'll see a summary slide of that. But knowing there's a very deep study behind it, including for New Haven, I heard you speaking earlier about not only intra-district magnets, but you have inter-district magnets, as well as the neighborhood schools. So we had to analyze all those and enrollment patterns. Task B, we spent a good bit of time with your subject leaders talking about curriculum and programmatic priorities moving forward, and with particular attention to making sure that those that need to be in every school and are not currently in the programs or not currently in the square footage are looked at and dealt with. Task C, facility conditions, capacity, utilization. Those 3 elements, we went through each of your buildings, a good representation of your buildings, and your facility staff went through others according and filled out our spreadsheets on these conditions, and we separated them into architectural components like windows and doors and finishes, mechanical systems, and then capacity, meaning the size of each of these buildings and what is a comfortable size, and utilization, which how are they being utilized today based on current enrollments. Task D for master planning is we had to take all of these stats and figures and schools and conditions and try to create a format that you can use for this step 2 that Dr. Negrone and Tom are speaking about. So you have all of the raw data to take the next steps into looking at your school district as a whole and solving some of the issues that that were surfaced in this report. And then, of course, we prepared the final report, which is available. All right, thank you. Next slide, please. And then I'll turn it over to Kemp to talk about enrollment.
Okay, thanks, Jay. Good evening, everyone. This slide represents the enrollment study that was conducted. It was one of the first things that we did at the outset of the study. It was conducted by SLR, who was a consultant of ours, as well as overseen by the SLAM Collaborative and Mike Zuba, who is one of our demographers. He's not available tonight, but you can see that the target 22-23 enrollment of 18,877 isn't right in the middle of the chart there. That was basically the first year of our study, and you can see a decrease from the peak enrollment district-wide back in 2016-17 of just under 22,000. So a decrease of about 3,100 students over that period of time. And then projecting into the future, 10-year projections, you can see that there's an additional decrease projected over the next 10 years of another 17 or so, 1,750 students approximately. You can see the chart is broken down into the major different grade ranges, yellow being the K through 8 range, green 9 through 12, and then we have carried a fixed amount for pre-K for the 10-year projection as well. Next slide. As Jay mentioned, we did a capacity and utilization study of all your buildings. So the way to read this chart is each school has its current enrollment, and this enrollment was as of 22-23. And that's the blue component of each bar. And then in many cases, you have a green component, which represents a seat surplus, so available seats in those schools. The black bar with the value on the top is the actual study capacity that we calculated for each building. And then in some cases, you'll note that there's a small red component to the bar, which represents a seat deficit. So you'll see that in the Hill House and Wilbur Cross High Schools, where we are over capacity in those two buildings. And then two other, Sound School and Co-op, are essentially at capacity, slightly over. Also, the way this chart is broken down, we have the inter-district magnet schools to the right-hand side of the chart for both the pre-K-8s and the middle school, high school grade grouping. And then you have your comprehensive high schools in the center, and then to the left are the neighborhood and or what we call intra-district magnet pre-K-8 schools. This is a lot to look at. So what we've done is on the next slide, we've aggregated the information.
Kemp, you want to just give them a definition of the study capacity, how you computed that? It's not 100%.
Sure. Yeah, we did a classroom count, did not include special spaces. So, those transient specials are not included in that capacity, but we did a classroom count and utilized the district ideal classroom loading, as well as utilized a 21st century modern educational delivery net square feet per seat for those rooms, and then essentially developed a capacity with those components. Thanks for that reminder, Jay. Next slide. So in aggregate, across the district in 2022-23, you'll see the two bars to the left, the blue bar to the left at 79%, and then the green bar to the left at 102%. That is the K-8 pre-K-8 utilization in the blue, and the green is the 9 through 12 utilization. So you, as I mentioned, you're currently operating over capacity in your high schools in the 2022-23 year, and approximately 79% overall for the pre-K to 8 utilization. A few details up on in the bullet points. The projected overall utilization of 85%. You still have that seat surplus of about 3,300 seats. And then looking a little bit more closely at the K-8, you see the 79% utilization and high school at 102. As part of our planning exercise, we looked to 5 years into the future and took a look at what the overall utilization would be for both of those grade range. And you can see that they're on the decline, 75% utilization for the pre-K to 12, pre-K to 8 in 27-28, and then 91% in the high schools for 27-28. So one positive aspect of this is that the current bubble that you're experiencing in the high school grade range does pass through in the next 5 years. So you do gain back some of that capacity. Next slide. Jay, you want to speak about the process for facilities condition?
Yes, I'll go ahead here. So as we mentioned, every school was rated according to a series of elements: quality of finishes, mechanical system life, sites, playgrounds, conditions, site conditions. And we gave every element. There were probably about 15 to 20 elements that we graded. We gave them all basically 0 to 3, and then we looked at them and gave them conditional scores. So green, 1, less than 1 is good. Number 2, fair, system or components are working but require maintenance or end of life. You all understand that. We discussed earlier about some mechanical systems that have to be replaced. It will require moderate investments to maintain or replace building infrastructure. And we say midterm, meaning 3 to 10 years, you need to be looking at what those elements are and how much money that you have in your capital plan to repair them. The systems, those schools that are poor need immediate, some of them need immediate items. The systems might be problematic. You might have disruptions to occupants, operators, and this requires major capital investments. Again, I've seen you today, even today, going for them. Next slide, please. This next slide is going to show you every school in the system and how they ranked. You know that the green is good, so you only see 2 of the green ones there. Poor, you can see a considerable number of them, and I believe they've already used this information. As you know, it's been here for a bit. When they looked at which schools really needed to close, they probably didn't need the list. They were pretty obvious when you had that opportunity. But here is this and set out by sections: middle high schools on the right hand of the page, elementary K-8 in the middle, and then the interdistrict magnet schools at the bottom of the page. But then we took all them and put them we took these last 2 pieces of information. If we go to the next slide, and our report details each one of those elements that is graded. So in this slide here, we created a matrix where the lower left are schools that are in poor condition and have low utilization, whereas the upper right is in good condition and high utilization. You see Bomis in the bottom right there, less utilization. I believe that has been revised because you've now moved some of the kids over from one of the other schools into that for the upper grade into there. The ones in the middle, they really range. Some of them are closer to poor, like the ones that are in the box on the left that need to be considered seriously to right away, and others that approach zero or closer to one. I think well, there's some in here. I can not find you there, but there's somewhere like MBA 1.35. There's probably just a few items in MBA that need to be addressed at schools in pretty good condition. Most of the newer schools are in fairly good condition, but they all have some major components that are getting old and getting tired. This chart is to help you when you take a look at the district as a whole and decide what to do about the overall capacity and extra seats. It'll give you just one piece of or two pieces of information, that's capacity utilization. What it doesn't give you, and that's something you're going to have to address through neighborhood and community meetings, and is dealing with what effect would closing one of these schools have on a community, and make sure that you balance where these schools are in the city and how they are picking up neighborhood schools or these various magnets that you have. Tom, next slide, please. So in that enrollment and utilization, as we just mentioned, significant surplus of 3,300 seats. Currently, there's 11 elementary and that have utilization below 75%. As we know, enrollment is projected to decline, adding to that surplus as the years go through. And although there's surplus of seats, we know Hill House and Wilbur Cross are over capacity. As Kemp mentioned, that won't be too long. But one special note there is that, and I heard the discussion about inter-district magnets and attracting more students from outside the city. At the career high school, there's seats going empty because we don't have inter-district students coming in, and that, I believe, is a 3-to-1 ratio. So for every out-of-district student, you can move 3 students from Wilbur Cross. And the greatest surplus of seats exist at the neighborhood and intra-district pre-K-8 schools, as we can see from our charts. Next. Facility conditions, 10 current schools identified in poor condition, and many of even more than that when you consider those that are in fair. 31 are in fair, and they have, they really range from close to poor and really maybe need just a couple good things to bring them up to good. And then, of course, only 2 in good. Next slide, please. Kemp, back to you. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Part of the study was to assess the parity of classroom types and facilities across the district through all schools. We conducted surveys with district directors and got an understanding of where there were some deficiencies at different schools, and assessed that parity. The summary of the findings there: all schools should have access to space that support the academic specials, such as art and music, and there are some that do not have those types of spaces. They should have areas that promote STEM, maker, hands-on learning, and general academics such as science and world language should have spaces that support their functions. In some cases, those classes are being taught in rooms that are not really specialized for the specific academics. And then the academics are supported. If academics are supported with shared teacher classrooms, proper teacher planning spaces need to be provided to accommodate those teachers that are floating during those off sections. Growing and evolving special ed and student service needs. There is a lack of purpose-built or appropriate space that support the needs of students. For example, ESL rooms in some schools don't exist. Review of existing facilities to understand where updates to infrastructure, equipment, and furniture would better support those teacher and student needs. And then utilize vacant spaces within the schools to support curriculum that is currently not offered. Next slide. So as we got into the master planning, we developed a series of goals and objectives and strategies. The goals and objectives are intended to be specific enough to provide meaningful guidance to the district, but flexible enough so that it can respond to changing conditions and priorities over time. The strategies for implementation are developed to support the objectives and goals of this plan and can be implemented independently or collectively based on district capacity, resources, and community input. And I think the community input piece is one of the primary things that is going to help craft this plan. And then finally, planning is a continuous process, and those goals and objectives and strategies will provide a foundation for future decision making and plan refinement. Next slide. The overarching vision and goals are going to support your New Haven Public Schools strategic plan. That's the objective. Develop a sustainable plan that addresses efficient uses of buildings and resources, facility investments, and changing educational needs. We want to right size and reposition schools to guide funding and resources more deliberately toward the highest return on investment, and provide equitable access to all the resources, and then leverage this master plan as a roadmap to develop detailed actions. Next slide. Overarching objectives: formulate a plan to consolidate pre-K-8 schools within the next 3 years was one of our recommendations. New Haven Public Schools should consider individual school utilization, condition, age, capital renewal versus cost avoidance, current and future operational budgets, programming needs, and location as it determines the most appropriate steps. And I think this is that first bullet is where the community input is going to be very important in what schools are targeted. Achieve fiscal and operational sustainability by aligning school facilities to enrollment and ensure efficient operation, a right-sized portfolio, and well-utilized facilities. Develop a capital investment strategy that aligns with New Haven Public Schools' ability to fund, repair, and maintain those facilities. And then provide full complement of support spaces at each building in appropriately sized spaces. And that fourth bullet is really kind of touching on the fact that there are some facilities across the district that are teaching certain things in inappropriately sized spaces for what they're being taught. Address overcrowding at Hill House and Wilbur Cross. That's, as we mentioned earlier, that's kind of a short-term thing by leveraging available space in other high school facilities and allow expansion of the CTE programs at Hill House and Wilbur Cross. And then improve quality of interdistrict magnet facilities and offerings. And I think that last bullet will help facilitate the second to last bullet, as Jay had mentioned, at career. Next slide.
Kemp, I'm going to pause you right there.
Sure.
These overarching objectives are really going to turn into the goals that will guide us through the next steps of this plan development. These will help us to have kind of a compass that will keep us on track with our strategic plan. As we develop our next strategic plan, as the 2024 year comes to an end, these will be integrated into that, so we have the direction planned that we need to achieve. That way, we're able to move toward that next chapter for the district with having something behind us that will help us through the data that was presented today and the overarching objectives to push us toward where we need to be as a district. And these will help us to get there. So I'll move on to the next slide for you, Kemp.
All right, thank you. Then the strategies for implementation are developed to support these the objectives. I think that's kind of what you were just saying, Tom. And they can be implemented independently or collectively based on the capacity of resources and community input. Each strategy needs to be evaluated within the context of the overarching goals, and some of the strategies that we are grouped around the following focus areas of capital planning and procedures, school consolidation, intra-district versus neighborhood. I think that's a big one. Pre-K to 8 schools, high school space needs, and inter-district magnets. Those are kind of the 6 primary categories of strategy that we feel you should focus on. Next slide.
And then really Tom's going to take it over from here because he has sort of the first stage of the next step planned out. We're working. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop share for a minute so I can come out of this and okay. And we'll share screen again. So thank you very much, Kemp and Jay. I appreciate what you've put together, and you've given us a good roadmap. And I'm just going to take what you've put together and expand on it a little bit. So our core values in our strategic plan are really what guided this study. We've focused a lot on our mission and our vision with the district in order to be able to deliver on the mission and the vision. We really needed to keep those as close to the vest as possible as we moved through this to make sure that we were hitting that mark. Now that we're at the end of this time and moving into the next strategic plan, it's going to be even more important that we hold on to the mission and vision that is part of this plan and moving into the next. So the team developing this report has worked from the vision and goals set forward by the NHPS strategic plan. It's now become our mission to take these recommendations and move them to set NHPS on a path that will bring us to the next chapter of excellence. It's very important that we stay focused on that next chapter because that's where we want to be. This report is the first step moving toward the district vision and goals from where we are now to where we want to be. The data collected has been identifies specific objectives that will help the district align to the vision and goals. These will be the compass that is needed to position the district to areas of concentration as we move through the planning strategies. The planning strategies are the action that's going to come out of our goals and objectives. The development of a task force, including NHPS staff, Board of Education members, and community members, to assist NHPS in moving through the plan strategies in order to meet BOE policies, City of New Haven charter, and to move this plan to the next steps. As we look at the plan for the future, the task force is a vital piece of that, to bring all of the people that need to be in the room to make decisions together to look at the recommendations that are put forward and put them into action in the right way so that we're following Board of Education policy and city charter. Those are both very important pieces to these steps. Along with that, it will integrate all of the entities that are involved so that no one entity has more information than the other, involving the community, involving the school district staff, members from the Board of Education, members from city management. So the objectives that were covered in the presentation previously, as I stated, are very important to us moving forward. So I'm just going to go through them again real quick because I think that they're a vital piece of how we're going to get from step 2 on. Our objectives: formulate a plan to consolidate pre-K 8 schools within the next 3 years. NHPS should consider individual school utilization, condition, age, capital renewal versus cost avoidance, current and future operating budgets, programmatic needs, and location as it determines the most appropriate next steps. Number one of them all, I believe, as we look to reposition the district, these are objectives that we need to keep in mind as we start to look forward to those next steps of our capital plan and school realignment. Achieving fiscal and operational sustainability by aligning school facilities to achieve enrollment to ensure efficient operation and right-sized portfolio and well-utilized school facilities. Another extremely important aspect of what we are trying to achieve is to right-size the district for the enrollment and the programming. The right sizing is going to require input from all parties. And that's part of what the task force will be charged with pulling together. The development of a capital investment strategy that aligns with NHPS' ability to fund, repair, and maintain its facilities. We all know that the capital funding has been lacking for many years. There's a lot of deferred maintenance that has contributed to the conditions of the schools in their current state. So we need to be realistic about what we can achieve and what we cannot achieve and how we're going to achieve it with the monetary resources we have for capital and for long-term maintenance of our buildings. So as we develop our strategies, that's something that we need to keep in mind. How are we going to maintain our facilities moving forward, even after realignment? And what does that mean for the district dollars for operations? And where do those dollars come from? So those are some of the questions that are being generated from the conversations around doing this, going through the steps that we're moving through. Provide a full complement of support space at each building, appropriately sized spaces. So this is another one that is going to require a lot of coordination between the academic team and the operations team to look at these spaces to determine what capital needs are required. Are there renovations needed? Are there spaces that can be repurposed? And what would that look like at each school? To do that across our portfolio of 41 schools is extensive. So we want to make sure that we're doing it in a planned way that takes our financial resources into account. Address overcrowding at Hill House and Wilbur Cross by leveraging available space in other high school facilities to allow expansion of programming, CTE, medical, clinical, tech, etc. So this goes to our ability to repurpose space with capital funds that are available and how we would go about doing that. So with this, again, the task force that is requested, I think would have a vital piece of looking at these two schools and leveraging the space within them in the right way. That would, again, take into account our capital resources. And then improve quality of interdistrict and magnet facilities and offerings. This is, as we start to look at the magnet schools and the enrollments and all of those pieces that fit together, this is another area that we want to keep an eye on so that we can determine if there's spaces that are available. How do we go about filling them? Do we look at various, the various different pathways that we can take to achieve that? What does that look like? And the task force would be charged with identifying how we move forward in those areas. So all of these planning objectives that I spoke about are woven into the planning strategies that were discussed earlier with Mr. Moriart and Jay Brotman. The planning strategies are really the what are we going to do, the steps that we're going to start to take to move this process forward and achieve the objectives that were spoken about earlier. So some of the areas that we're going to look at, capital planning and procedures, evaluation through community and stakeholder involvement for school consolidation, and then some of the other areas were intra-district and versus neighborhood schools, high school space needs, and intra-district magnets and pre-K-8 schools. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of those tonight. And the first one being capital planning and procedures. This report provides a picture of the real estate conditions across the district and is a high-level management tool to assist in the decisions related to capital planning and development. As a high-level assessment of conditions, we must now move to additional assessments that quantify in a more direct way dollars needed for capital planning. What we've been presented with provides us with a conditions that is on the surface. And this is what was, as they developed their planning tools, the assessment tool that was utilized by the Spiegels and Slam Group was effective in identifying overall conditions. Now it's time to look at, well, what extent? How do we move forward and have a full understanding of the conditions and costs across the district that will have significant impact on the ability to make decisions related to capital investments in a planned way that identifies where funding is needed and to what extent. But to what extent is the piece that I believe is the largest missing piece of what we need to do next as it relates to conditions of schools. This can be achieved through a facilities conditions assessment, which is similar to what was done in 2008 by Sightlines, only more extensive in the engineering and the technical aspects of the report. And it's not something that we could do a sampling of. We would need to do the entire district, every building, go through every system, evaluate it by an engineer, a qualified technician, quantify it into a priority of repair, and look at the replacement dollars that are associated with those systems. Typically, as guided by the International Facility Management Association and by the Building Owners Association of America, we operate within 2 to 5% the replacement value of our buildings as part of the capital plan development. So at the current rate of $300 a square foot approximately, and 4.6 million square feet, the need for the district would be approximately $28 to $30 million, depending upon where the costs fall that day. Construction costs vary daily and change based on market value and market needs. So with our current capital at around 8 a year, you could see that there's a significant gap. This will provide us with the tools that are necessary to identify how to get through that gap. And once we identify the funding needs through a facilities conditions assessment, we can add that to the process of right-sizing the district to really understand how the facilities fit together. And the condition and the recommendation of some buildings is extremely obvious. But I think that there are some that may not be so obvious, and they come through an assessment like this. So one of the things that I had done when I first came to the district was I did a evaluation of our building age. Just to give you a quick synopsis of our facilities. We have 16 properties that are 21 years or older with significant end-of-life issues of building systems. And then we have another 24 properties behind that are in that 15 to 20 year range. Those systems are beginning to fail as well. So the capital need for the district is going to be significant. And that leads us to the school consolidation question. Review of the programs and the general building conditions, several data-centric recommendations for realignment of district buildings can be drawn. Each of these will require involvement from the Board of Education, the City Economic Development Office, and the community to move toward an actionable plan. We have a plan not only for how to meet the mission of NHBS and now, but also in the future. It's important to view these through the lens of Board of Education policy, City of New Haven charter, and community engagement. All of those pieces need to come together to be able to develop a plan that will take into consideration what schools would come together for consolidation, how those properties would be dispositioned, if there's dollars associated with the closure of that or reallocation of that school, what does that look like? Where do those dollars come from in order for us to be able to close that school in the right way? How does that fit into the city economic development plan? Once the school is dispositioned back to the city, how do we ensure that those dollars come back to the Board of Education to allow us to do a lot of the renovation piece that we need to in order to be able to move forward in other areas of our planning? So the next step for this would be to review internally with the Board of Education what those potential consolidations and closures may be. Discuss with and review the economic development team at the city how those decisions or potential closures and consolidations would impact the economic development plan for the city, and then engage with the community once we have a cohesive plan in place that partners both with the city and the Board of Education and New Haven Public Schools. And then in conclusion, the NHBS district is at a time where our facilities need to change to the needs of our community to deliver the education our students deserve. This report is the first step in determining what comes next for NHBS in this process. In the 1990s, the New Haven Public Schools and the City of New Haven did just this. we are at that time where we need to make that same step. It is now time for us all to act again to be that next chapter of excellence for the district, for the city of New Haven, and for the students that we serve. Dr. Negron, I don't know if you want to wrap that up.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you to the team. Again, as I stated at the beginning, wanted to have this opportunity to review what the findings were from the facilities review, and also to share with you what have been the recommendations that we have received. I just want to reiterate, like Tom Lamb just finished saying, right? It's been over 30 years since the district went through this process. And I know that during my entry and visiting all the schools, I know that concerns around facilities kept coming up. Every school, every building, every team. And I believe now is the time in which we have to take all of these pieces, the work that Mr. Lamb just finished articulating. There's more work to be done. But I want to make sure that, again, in phase 2, that at the next FNO, that I'm able to bring forth additional information. But more importantly, I want to highlight that this needs to be a comprehensive engagement with our community. This work has to be done with community, not to community. So I want to reiterate that. So again, it's a lot of information to process. So Mr. Wilcox, this is why I wanted to bring it in stages. And I guess I will pause here to get any reactions or questions that we might be able to entertain tonight.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions from the committee? I know I have several. So here, none others, I'll jump in with mine. Thank you all very much for this presentation. It's a lot of information here. I look forward to reading the full accompanying report that was talked about. Just the general request that these, the slides that were presented tonight will be posted tomorrow so that others can see those. I would also request, if the intention is that this ends up on a full board agenda, that the links queued up to this presentation and discussion are sent previous as a homework, so that we can have efficient use of the time, so that people will have no point in having the exact same presentation that was recorded now not used in the future. I also just want to reiterate an invitation that I often make, which is the Citywide Building and Stewardship Committee. There is a monthly report provided by Mr. Lamb, Mr. Finelli, and others about all the projects that are ongoing in the district to address some of these problems. I mean, that's done kind of as a piecemeal approach, often when things are known to be breaking or reaching a crisis point, as opposed to what I know they would prefer to be doing, which is to be able to have the funding to be able to attack this proactively, as is recommended in this report. So that report is posted online, so you can see monthly. I mean, just another example, the board just approved last month the application for HVAC systems that I imagine are addressed in this report, that that's 4 HVAC systems that might be replaced. So I just want to make sure people understand that it's not like work isn't happening. It's just something that always stuck with me. A previous CFO we had mentioned that in a district he was working in, he spent as much on, I think, 10 buildings as we're spending on 40 in terms of the capital and the maintenance costs, which is just the unfortunate reality we live in. So hopefully this will help build that out. My one question is, or my recommendation is, let's take a look at the Citywide Building and Stewardship Committee as the task force or a group organized underneath them, since that already is a group that's in place to be dealing with a lot of these issues. And it includes representatives from the city, including positions on there for alders, like the head of the Board of Alders Education Committee and the Finance Committee, as well as City Budget Director, Economic Planning, as well as also board appointments, etc. So that I think is, I think a lot of what you're talking about is there. And this might also, I'll make sure to work with, President Rivera to make sure all the board appointments are handled, and we'll work with our colleagues in the city and the Board of Alders to make sure that everything is set as far as that goes, because this might become, it's an important committee already. It might become quite important over the next couple of years as these projects start to happen. And I did appreciate, not only from our consultants, and thank you again, Mr. Brotman and Mr. Morehart, and I know you're representing several other people that have been working on this, so thank you for all that work. But I did appreciate hearing over and over again that there's going to be community involvement. These are the community's schools. Schools are very important to a community. Everybody I know on this call knows and believes that. And board policy is, these communities are nothing about us without us, basically. People will be brought into the mix here, particularly if there's anything specific to a particular school, as opposed to the larger kind of the top overview of it. So I thank you all, especially you, Dr. Negron, for mentioning that. So those are some things that come into play, and I would just suggest that maybe at a future meeting we just have a sense of some broad timelines to add to this mix, or maybe it could even be added to Mr. Lamp's part of the presentation, just to kind of pencil in, understanding that it's broad and it can be notated as such, that these can be subject to change, but things over the next several months versus the next year versus etc. Because I know people are going to be interested in what these next timelines are as we start to examine some of these things. So those are some of the first things that came to my mind listening to this presentation. So I don't know, does anybody else have any comments or questions? Or I know we've been on here almost 3.5 hours. So I am cognizant of the time, but I want to make sure we have the time if we need it. We take the time if we need it. Okay. So please, let's, and that could also work for the conversations we had previously related to conflicts of interest, etc. Links to the queued up meeting recordings might save some time in often busy agendas for the full board meeting, but also give people a chance to be appropriately brought up to speed on important things. All right. So thank you all very much. And not just for the people that presented, because I know it was talked about in the presentation. I know a lot of staff, the assistant superintendents, building leaders had to weigh in on things, a whole variety of other people were tapped in for parts of all this. So thank you. Hearing no other comments or questions, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And I second it. We'll go ahead and vote. President Rivera?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So we are adjourned, and thank you all for
Thank you.
spending the time and making it a long day longer.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.